What if I told you there's an economic powerhouse hiding in plain sight? A block of nations with a combined GDP of $24.183 trillion that controls 60% of the world's oil production and represents 1.8 billion people across 57 countries. Welcome to Revive the Ummah podcast. I'm your host, Sabina Rosegold, and today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and untapped opportunities in global economics. We're talking about the potential for a unified Islamic economic alliance that could reshape the entire world order. Now, before we begin, let me be clear. This isn't about politics or ideology. This is about pure economics. We're looking at hard data, resource distribution, trade patterns, and financial systems. And what we're going to discover might just blow your mind. Here's what we're covering in today's episode. First, we'll explore the current state of economic cooperation among Muslim-majority nations and why it's massively underperforming. Then, we'll dive into the incredible resource wealth of these countries and how it could be leveraged. We'll examine a fascinating proposal for a gold and silver-backed Islamic currency system that could rival the dollar, and implementation roadmap for making this vision a reality. So here's my question for you. What would happen if the Islamic world decided to truly work together economically? Let's find out. Part 1. The Sleeping Giant. The economic powerhouse you've never heard of. Let's start with some numbers that will absolutely shock you. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, that's the OIC, represents 57 member countries. These aren't small players we're talking about. Here are the facts. Combined GDP, 24.183 trillion. That's bigger than the United States. With observer countries, 29.98 trillion. Total population, 1.8 billion. Share of global oil production, 60%. Share of global oil trade, 70%. Now here's where it gets interesting and frankly shocking. Despite having this enormous economic potential, trade among these OIC countries represents only about 17 to 20% of their total trade volume. Let that sink in. Basically, the Muslim world is trading with one another less than 20% of what they could be trading with one another. Compare that to the European Union, where intra-regional trade is 60% of total trade. Even ASEAN, Asian, which is much smaller, achieves 25% internal trade. The Islamic world is leaving massive amounts of money on the table. Why is this happening? What's preventing 1.8 billion people from trading more with each other? The Islamic Center for Development of Trade identified the main culprits: inadequate transportation, infrastructure, non-standardized trade procedures, limited financial integration, and insufficient market information sharing. Basically, these countries haven't built the systems to easily trade with each other. But here's the fascinating part, and this gives us hope. Recent trends show this is changing. OIC agricultural production has increased by 13.2% since 2016, actually surpassing growth rates in non-OIC developing countries. So we have this sleeping giant, enormous resources, massive population, incredible wealth, but operating at maybe 20% of its potential. Now, what would happen if we could unlock the other 80%? Part 2. The resource gold mine. Resource wealth that defies imagination. Now let's talk about what these countries actually have. Let's start with energy. OIC countries collectively possess 998 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. To put that in perspective, that's enough oil to supply the entire world for about 30 years at current consumption rates. Did you get that? The entire world for 30 years consecutively. at the current consumption rate. They produce 12 billion barrels annually. The major players: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait for oil, Qatar, Iran, Algeria, UAE for natural gas, where they control 37% of global production. But here's what most people don't realize: it's not just about energy. The agricultural resources are absolutely staggering. Palm oil, 75% of global production, primarily Indonesia and Malaysia. Jute, 80% of global production, mainly Bangladesh. Natural rubber, 70% of global production. Cotton, 13%, with major production in Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt. And then you have the breadbasket countries. Turkey is a major wheat producer with advanced farming technology. Pakistan produces massive amounts of rice and wheat. Bangladesh is a rice powerhouse. Kazakhstan has vast agricultural lands and is a major wheat exporter. Are you starting to see the picture here? What if these countries coordinated their agricultural production? Currently, about 330 million people in OIC countries face food insecurity. But, and this is crucial, the Islamic world has the agricultural capacity to feed not just its own population, but potentially much of the world. The Islamic Organization for Food Security has identified that with proper coordination, enhanced wheat production capabilities, improved rice production systems, and better resource utilization, complete food self-sufficiency is not just possible, it's inevitable. Think about this logically. You have countries that produce 75% of the world's palm oil, 80% of its jute, and massive amounts of grain and other staples. The only reason there's food insecurity is lack of coordination and distribution systems. And we haven't even talked about mineral wealth yet. Indonesia, Turkey, and several Central Asian OIC members have significant gold mining operations. Turkey alone has over 400 tons of gold reserves. Saudi Arabia has 323 tons. The UAE has 74 tons and growing. This is not theoretical wealth. This is real, tangible, extractable resources. Part 3. The Islamic Currency Revolution. Bringing back the gold standard, the Islamic way. Now we're getting to the really interesting part. What if I told you that for over 1,300 years, there was a stable, widely accepted currency system that worked across diverse territories from Spain to Central Asia? And what if I told you that this system could be revived today to create one of the world's most stable monetary systems? I'm talking about the Islamic dinar and dirham. The gold dinar, 4.25 grams of pure gold, and the silver dirham, 2.975 grams of pure silver. These weren't just coins, they were the backbone of one of history's greatest economic systems. Why does this matter today? Well, what's the biggest problem with modern fiat currencies? Inflation, devaluation, political manipulation, list goes on. Your savings lose value over time because governments can just print more money. But you can't print gold, and you can't create silver out of thin air. So here's how a modern Islamic currency system could work. And pay attention, because this is brilliant. Level 1. Interstate trade currency. Major transactions between OIC countries conducted in gold-backed dinars and silver-backed dirhams. Level 2. Reserve currency. Instead of holding US dollars or euros, central banks maintain reserves in precious metals. Level 3. Domestic circulation. Gradual introduction of precious metal-backed notes and even digital currencies for everyday use. Level 4. Islamic development finance. All development projects denominated in stable asset-backed currency units. The advantages are enormous. Protection against inflation. Precious metals maintain purchasing power over long periods. Independence reduces dependence on the US dollar. Stability, less volatile than fiat currencies subject to political shocks. and complete Islamic compliance, eliminates interest-based monetary policy. But can it actually work? Do these countries have enough gold and silver? Here's the beautiful part. Indonesia, Turkey, and several other OIC countries have active gold mining industries. More importantly, oil exporting countries could convert petroleum revenues into precious metal reserves. Instead of accumulating dollars that lose value, they accumulate gold that maintains value. Think about this. If just the Gulf countries converted half their oil revenues into precious metals for 5 years, they could back a currency system that serves 1.8 billion people. And unlike fiat currencies that depend on government promises, this system could be backed by real, tangible assets. Every dinar represents actual gold. Every dirham represents actual silver. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? So let's talk about the challenges. But first, let me tell you about the BRICS comparison that will surprise you. Part 4. Beating BRICS at their own game. Why the Islamic bloc could outperform BRICS. Everybody's talking about BRICS these days. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They've created a $100 billion new development bank. They're trading in local currencies. They're challenging Western financial dominance. But here's what nobody's telling you. An Islamic economic bloc would have significant advantages over BRICS. First, shared values. BRICS countries have very different political systems, cultures, and economic philosophies. They're united mainly by opposition to Western dominance. The Islamic world has a common religious and cultural foundation that creates much stronger bonds. Second, resource complementarity. BRICS has some overlaps and competition. China and India are both manufacturing powerhouses competing for markets. Brazil and Russia both export commodities. But look at the Islamic world. Gulf countries have energy. Indonesia and Malaysia have agriculture and manufacturing. Turkey has advanced industry. Pakistan and Bangladesh have textiles and pharmaceuticals. Egypt connects Africa and the Middle East. See the difference? Instead of competition, you have perfect complementarity. Third, geographic continuity. Many OIC countries share borders or are geographically close. You can drive from Morocco to Indonesia, passing through mostly Islamic countries. That's not true for BRICS. Brazil and China are on opposite sides of the world. Fourth, existing institutions. The Islamic Development Bank, Islamic Corporation for Insurance, Islamic Trade Finance Corporation. These institutions already exist and have already dispersed billions in development financing. And fifth, market size. The combined GDP is comparable to or larger than BRICS, but with better internal integration potential. Here's the kicker. Several OIC countries are already BRICS members or partners. Iran is joining BRICS. UAE and Saudi Arabia are BRICS partners. This creates natural bridges for cooperation. Imagine this scenario. The Islamic Economic Bloc and BRICS working together on alternative payment systems, challenging Western-dominated institutions, promoting South-South cooperation, addressing climate change, and facilitating technology transfer. You'd have a combined bloc representing over 3 billion people and probably 40% of global GDP. That would fundamentally alter the balance of global economic power. But let's get practical. How would this actually work? What would the implementation look like? Stay tuned for part 5, the roadmap to reality.
A new day, a new age, we rise. A new day, a new age,